The Jews said to him, "What sign do you show us for doing these things?" Jesus answered them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." It is Wednesday, the 20th of July, 2022. Time for the reading of our devotional thought for today, and trusting that it will become more than just something we hear, but that we put into practice and incorporate in our lives today. And it is entitled, "The True Tabernacle and Temple." And the verse today, John chapter 2, beginning with verse 18, which reads, The Jews said to him, "What sign do you show us for doing these things?" Jesus answered them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." That's John chapter 2, verses 18 and 19. Alistair Begg writes, "Some understand the Bible to be little more than a mixture of philosophical information and spiritual tidbits. Nothing could be further from the truth, for the Bible contains the unfolding drama of God's intervention in our world. The theme of God's kingdom provides us with one useful way of entering and following the thread of its story, and in every kingdom there is a dwelling place for the king. Throughout much of the Old Testament, the tabernacle was the place where God dwelt with Israel. While the tabernacle was among God's people, though, it was not open to them. Even Moses himself could not enter when the cloud of God's glory settled upon it. Take a look at Exodus chapter 40, verses 34 and 35. Then, once Jerusalem had become the capital of the land, the tabernacle tent was replaced by a permanent building, the temple. Here was God, the King of his people, dwelling in the capital city of his people and their land. But still, the way to him was barred by the curtain that separated the most holy place from the rest of the temple complex. And then the Word became flesh and literally tabernacled among us. John chapter 1, verse 14. In reading the New Testament, we discover that just as the people of old looked to the tabernacle for an encounter with God, now we look to a person, God himself, who pitched himself in human flesh and lived among us. John's language specifically communicates that God in Jesus dwelled among his people physically and now dwells in his people by his Spirit. John chapter 14, verses 16 through 18. He is here among us. Jesus, in other words, is the true tabernacle. This is what he was seeking to explain when, after he had cleansed the temple by driving out the merchants and money changers who had set up shop there, he was challenged about his authority to do such an odious thing in John chapter 2, verses 13 through 16. And he answered, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." John explains that after Jesus was crucified, was buried, and rose from the dead, his disciples understood that he was speaking about the temple of his body. In verse 21. When Jesus died, the curtain in the temple tore, signifying that through Christ we now have unfettered access to God, but also showing that the temple building was now obsolete, for its fulfillment had come. A few decades later, the temple in Jerusalem would ultimately be destroyed. If we want to meet with God, we must go to Jesus. We no longer need a specific building or special icon or shrines. God meets with his people when we are gathered and when we are scattered, not in places, but in the person of his Son, the true temple. Whatever day today is, and whatever you are up to, there is nothing and no one standing between you and the living encounter with the Holy God. The King dwells in you today. And what a powerful reality that the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, dwells in us today, dwells in you, dwells in me by the power of his Spirit. May we meditate on that today, and not only meditate on it, but may we practice His presence, and may we be like Jesus wherever we go. For truly, the true tabernacle and temple is Jesus, and He dwells and abides in us if we have committed our hearts and lives to Him. May that be so of you today. Commit your life to Christ in Jesus' name. And that concludes our devotional thought for today, this 20th day of July 2022. And for those of you reading through the Bible in a year, Psalms 26, 27, and 28, as well as Acts chapter 15, verses 1 through 21. Clive Walsh here, asking God's richest blessings